Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. This is the regular trustee meeting for Beavercreek Township. It is Monday, April 24th, and it is 5:01. If everyone would like to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we have an agenda. Are there any changes or corrections?
Yes. Go ahead. You go first.
I would like to add, after new business, the first executive session under 121.22 G1 to consider the appointment of a public official.
Okay.
And before that, under new business, we have employee recognition committee and then proclamation. So I'll need to add a proclamation for the Rotary Club at Beavercreek, and then we could go into executive session.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the general ledger report in the amount of $348,420.91 for the 4/19/2023 payroll.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Make a motion to accept the payment listing report in the amount of $280,127.16 for warrants through April 24th, 2023 as presented.
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the minutes on April 10th, 2023 regular trustee meeting.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Do I abstain?
You can.
I wasn't here.
You can, or you actually
You're
can
just-
vote.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
I read it, so.
All right. I will turn it over to Mr. Zaharia for our pre-scheduled speakers.
Yeah, so the first speaker we're supposed to have scheduled a couple months ago, so was a representative from Mr. Turner's office, Congressman Turner's office, so I don't see him here, so we'll move on to the next one. So I'd like to introduce Carrie Sharp with the Airport Board. We have a very exciting project that they are working on that kind of relates to some of the things we're working on in the township. So let me set this up. Yeah, let me set this up. And yeah, it does.
Okay, who was Dr. Lewis Jackson? Who's heard of him? Not just the airport name, but who's heard of Dr. Jackson? We got one. We got two. Three. I figured out four. Anybody here know him? He didn't pass away till 1994. Okay. You probably know then that he was a Tuskegee Airman. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what he did as a Tuskegee Airman? Do you know about anything else that he did? I didn't either until about 3 years ago. We had people coming to the airport because it's named for him. And here I am on the board, and I really didn't know much about him. So it was frustrating. We would see people come for Black History Month, get out of the van, large group come in, look around the airport, and like, yep, that's an airport. Okay, let's go. They'd get in the van and go away. And I thought, what a missed opportunity. So there are so many scholarships and activities and things they could have been involved in and could have taken the next step. And we missed on that because we didn't have any way to tell the story of who Lewis Jackson was, and he deserves to be remembered. And I didn't know that until after I started doing some research. I wanted to get a state historic marker placed at the airport. You've probably seen them, the brown signs that are cast metal with the kind of gold lettering on them.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband's done a few. We're both history buffs. That's all we do is history. That's our hobby. We're deep into it. So I had some experience at that. So I wanted to apply for it. But before you apply, of course, you're going to do some research and start gathering records and resources and proof of what you're claiming. And that's when I started the journey of learning about who Dr. Lewis really was. So I was kind of surprised. There's a lot more to him than just being a Tuskegee Airman. So this was a saying of his, an airplane in every garage. He was always thinking of the common man and making aviation within their grasp. So, which in some ways it is, in some ways it still isn't, but he did. He took it a long way to getting it there. So, like you say, most of them know he's a Tuskegee Airman, but he never flew a combat mission. He never left the United States, and he was never in the military. What he did do was design the training program that trained our Tuskegee Airmen, and he was a director of training at Tuskegee Institute. So he's the guy that created the program that created the Tuskegee Airmen. So, which for me blows my mind, because he's never flown in combat. He's never been in the military, yet he designed a program that turned out some of the best fighters ever for the Air Force. Well, they weren't Air Force yet, but Army Air Corps. And they won a lot of awards, so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Which just blows my mind that he was able to do that without, and he was not even 30 years old yet. So he was born in Angola, Indiana. It's less than 200 miles away in 1912, and he started working at the age of 8 to contribute to the family's income while in grade school. And he constructed model airplanes, read about crosswind landings in encyclopedias. So he's already getting into it, but he's already working hard. And you got to remember that he's growing up during the Depression. When he was 15, he took his first ride in the OX-5 Swallow in 1927. That's the one on the left. And in 29, he designed, built, and flew his own hang gliders, biplane, and monoplane. So he's motivated, which is pretty good. 2 years later, he was so determined to fly, he bought a fixer-upper, the Alco Sport monoplane, put a motorcycle engine in it. And even though that plane was destroyed in a windstorm before he could fly it, he did not give up. He was just getting started. In 1930, Jackson began formal flight instruction. In 32, he completed 7 whole hours of instruction in a Travel Air, a Waco 10, American Eaglet, a Curtiss Jenny, converted to a Parasol monoplane. I only had to switch planes once, and it was hard. I had to learn a whole new set of numbers, rules, where everything was, and that was very difficult in getting my private. I can't imagine soloing after 7 hours. The FAA requires at least 30 hours before you solo now. And somehow he did it in 7 after flying 4 different airplanes. Basically, whatever airplane he could get into, whatever he could find a flight in, he would take it. 5 different pilots provided his instruction, and after that, he soloed in his own Waco 10 in 1932. So Depression's on, but he's got his own airplane, and he's getting his pilot's license. So he was very, very motivated, very young. 32 to 37, Jackson barnstormed throughout Indiana and Ohio. That's probably when he found out about our cool area and came here, earning money to pay his way through college. So he wasn't just barnstorming, he was also earning money and wanted to get an education. 37, he got his transport pilot's license in northern Indiana. 39, commercial pilot with instructor rating. And that year he also earned his bachelor in education and got a job teaching in public schools. First one was in a one-room schoolhouse. So he has a dual track. He's advancing quickly through the aviation field and also in the education field. He didn't stop there. In 1940, this is the first time he went to Tuskegee, among other places. He joined the Cornelius Coffee in the Coffee Flying School. It's in Chicago. He completed advanced aerobatic training at Chicago School of Aeronautics in October. And remember that place, because we'll revisit that later. In October, he went to Tuskegee Institute, where he earned an airframe and power plant mechanics license. and instrument rating, and at the same time, he was teaching ground school there. So he's a student and a teacher at the same time. He's working very hard. Same time frame, he's also took coursework in aerial navigation in Georgia and the Civil Aeronautics Administration cross-country instructor course in Boston. So he's covered some ground, instructing in a couple different places. Hopefully you've seen this picture. Back in Tuskegee, Jackson was the director of training for the 99th Pursuit Squadron and the first Black military aviation. They were the first Black military aviation squadron, excuse me. A lot of you have probably seen this picture, but you may have seen it with the left side cut off, and that's him on the left side. He imparted his passion for education excellence in flight to his students. As a result of the 3 separate occasions, his students ranked first in comparison with other 22 schools in the Southeast Army Air Corps Training Command. So over and over, they kept ranking first place in many different aspects. April 11th, 1941, the flight that changed history as it's become known with Eleanor Roosevelt, when she flew with Chief Flight Instructor Alfred Anderson, who's in the cockpit with her there. This famous photo was cropped most of the time, cutting Jackson out of history, unfortunately. So even at the Air Force Museum, the picture doesn't include him underneath the wing. He was Anderson's boss, but Alfred Anderson was kind of the one who was the face of the Tuskegee Airmen. They considered him the father of aviation for Black pilots. So, but he was humble. He always stayed in the background, and he was happy to do that. He was dedicated to service. It's a short film, just a couple minutes long, tells you a little bit about the Tuskegee experiment. It wasn't, we're going to do this, it was considered an experiment because I think in the 30s, the Army had done an official study and determined that African Americans were not capable of doing technical jobs. So it took a lot of convincing to get them to even do this as an experiment. So even though they were there, even though they were training, it still wasn't a done deal. They still had to prove themselves. And that's a lot of weight to be putting on these young men's shoulders to be able to do that, because it changed history when they were successful. Need some sound?
Should be up.
Sorry.
You should have sound.
Maybe it's, nope, not muted. I'll roll it back a little bit. No. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Well, this is a contemporary video at the time, kind of promoting it, and this is, I think, probably shown at the Tuskegee Institute at the museum there that talks about them, and some of what I've already mentioned as far as, that it was an experiment and all the awards that they won. Basically, they blew it out of the water. They definitely proved them wrong, and it was because this was successful that they desegregated the military. So it opened a lot of doors, and it paved the way for a lot of things to change in America. So I apologize for the technical difficulty there. So that's a pretty great accomplishment, what he did. Obviously, it was very successful, and a lot of things were, a lot of eyes were opened. But after the war, he still wasn't done. After that, he came back to Xenia, Ohio, and I'm kind of glad that he did. I became an FAA flight examiner, and he tested over 400 pilots for flight certification between 47 and 1960. He developed an aircraft computer called a nav kit, which was used by many pilots in obtaining their license. And let's see, what else did he do? Multi-engine rating, appointment to the Citizens Advisory Committee. He worked with the FAA, president of Experimental Aircraft Association, Chapter 382. These are some of their logos up here. Technical advisor also with the chapter, and he was also a member of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association and the OX5 Aviation Pioneers. And he served on the first Greene County Airport Authority Board, and he served for several years on that. He was definitely part of the formation of the airport, so he was very much involved. So he's all about service. He's constantly wanting to serve his community. An airplane in every garage, that was his goal, clear up until almost before he died. And he was still working on design. It was a roadable airplane, which would accommodate the common man, which could be stored at home and towed or driven to the airport. In '56, Dr. Jackson created and flew the Versatile, which is pictured here, the first of 10 experimental airplanes developed to serve as both an airplane and a car in the 1960s. We hear companies talking about that now being developed at Springfield, but it started way back then. He was already looking down the road trying to make this happen for us. Okay, so it had folded wings for land travel. It was only 16 feet long, so it would fit in a garage once its 12-foot wingspan was folded. On the highway, it operated like a three-wheel motorcycle, cruised 35 to 50 miles per hour. The propeller was behind the passenger compartment in a slot surrounded by body and wings and tail. So in '48, he continued to get more degrees. He had a master's degree from Miami University, Oxford, Ohio. In December 1950, just 2 years later, he earned his PhD in higher education from Ohio State University. He spent a year as an associate professor of aviation at Ohio State University, and Jackson was also produced in an unpublished book entitled The New Fundamentals of Flight. I'd love to find it and get it published, but I don't know where it is. He served in positions including graduate dean, dean of students, vice president for academic affairs, acting president, and president at Central State University, and acting president and vice president for administration at Sinclair Community College. One of his great interests was entrepreneurship. He was very interested in that. So in 1974, he started the Business Entrepreneur Program at Sinclair Community College. He firmly believed that more students should think as employers. So he wanted people to be more self-reliant in that way. Students would be taught to create employment if they were thinking more as employers. I checked their website at Sinclair, and that program still exists. It's still a degree program there that he had created. So we're still feeling the effects of Dr. Jackson. Lots of honors, accolades, and service, all listed there. I don't need to say them all individually. The library at Indiana Wesleyan University is named for Lewis Jackson, as well as their airports. That's two places named for him. And of course, the airport's named for him. And you can see that he was still involved in a lot of different things in the community. So he didn't just sit back. He was always busy and always involved. So after he knew this fella down here, his name is Dewey Davenport. Who knows Dewey Davenport? I thought the whole world knew Dewey. Have you heard of the Barnstorming Carnival in Springfield that they have every year in July? Okay, he has a barnstorming business, and he is a captain of he flies for NetJets out of Cincinnati, and he's big in social media. So he's always putting Pilot Life, hashtag Pilot's Life, all over the internet. And he has a lot of followers. So he's spread the love of aviation, and he's always up for sharing aviation and taking people for a flight. He has his own hangar and several airplanes out in Jamestown. So he loves to barnstorm, but he does this primarily for his living, flying a commercial jet. He knew Jackson. They were neighbors. And he was just a kid back then, but Jackson instilled a love of aviation in Dewey, and Dewey carried it forward, and now he shares it with thousands of people. He's very, very well known in the aviation circles all over the country. I've been in an airport in Colorado, and I said to a pilot, "Do you know Dewey?" "Oh yeah, I know Dewey." Every airport I've been to, I've asked, "Do you know Dewey Davenport?" And they always know Dewey. So he's a great ambassador for aviation, no matter where he goes. So then there's the Barnstorming Carnival that's coming up. I highly recommend it. It's a ton of fun. It's free, so it's at Springfield Airport. This is Zaire Horton. Zaire is 16, and he flew into Lewis Jackson Airport to honor him from Chicago, from the Cornelius School of Aviation. So he's kind of continued that legacy, and he flew in and he wanted to visit some of the colleges in the area to pay honor to him and to the colleges in the area. So there's people that are coming to the airport just because it's named for him. So that's why we want to share the history of who he really was. And there he is with his co-pilot, the teddy bear. So it was in the newspapers. There was good press coverage of that. There we go. There's Dewey when he did his, let me get the name right. It's called a line check flight that he had to fly. And when he finished that flight, of course, he had it on internet, you know, Twitter and Facebook, that he was doing this line check flight to Seattle. And this young man, his name Aiden, follows him on the internet and was there to meet him, but never met him before, and wanted to be there to greet him when he finished his line check and officially became captain. So he has a big following and a big influence that all started with Lewis Jackson. There's 50 Tuskegee Airmen chapters around the United States. They all give scholarships, helping young people get their pilot's license. They put up markers, they have reunions, and so there's a lot of pride and legacy and excitement, I guess, that they keep alive, and that he all started with Lewis Jackson. Then there's this guy, crankiest guy I've ever known, but very, very smart. His name is John Dyke, and he was also a Greene County resident, and that's his wife, God help her, helping him. You'll see that the plane is being tied up behind their station wagon, and the wings are folded on top. Him and Dr. Jackson were very close friends, and they would sit, his daughter told me, at the kitchen table for hours drawing designs for a roadable airplane. So Jackson got him started on the idea of building a roadable plane for the common man that could be kept in your garage. And I call it the little plane that could, because the airplane, here you see, is being in a spot of honor at Oshkosh, which is AirVenture, the largest air show in the world. It was the very first home-built plane to fly into Oshkosh over 50 years ago. And it has been entered into the Home Builders Hall of Fame. Its design, you can see it's called the Dyke Delta, is very different than anything that had ever been designed before. It's kind of hard to explain why it's important, but when you ask him, most planes, the lift is generated by the wings. 50% of the lift is generated by the fuselage on this airplane, which was kind of groundbreaking. So there were others that were interested in it too. There it is on display in a museum up in Oshkosh so that others can see it. And those are fans from around the world that have built the plane. There's over 50 that have been built and are flown by people. He sells the design, and people build them. Dyke Delta was involved in NASA-funded flight testing. Kelly Aerospace towed the Delta behind another aircraft to obtain flight towing and engine-off glider controllability data, for use on future airspace travel designs. So over the years, the John Dyke JD-2, because the first one burned up, structure was evaluated by the University of Utah and the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Structural Laboratory. So it was that groundbreaking. They were looking at it, and it still has an influence on designs today. And it was all done at Greene County Airport, but also at Springfield because it had a longer runway, and they needed that for some of the testing. But it all started at the kitchen table with Lewis Jackson and John Dyke sitting there dreaming this up. So that's his legacy. It still affects us today. I think he lived his life in service to our county, but also in a wider aspect. So what are your questions, if any? Yes.
Did anything ever progress then with the airplane car? I mean, did they sell it and get a...
The versatile one?
Yeah.
It had some type of design flaw that couldn't be overcome, so he couldn't get an airworthiness certificate for it. And I think that's part of the reason he hooked up with John Dyke. He had aeronautical engineer degree. So he had a lot of degrees too, but most of them were towards education. And it was more the hobby of building and flying and teaching, but not in aero design. So it was when they teamed up together that they came up with the Dyke Delta that changed things.
But it's never gone off. I mean, really, no,
I
nobody
mean, he
can
flew
buy
it.
it now.
He flew it, but there were just some things that it was hard to get approval back then. It was still kind of a new concept of building your own airplane from the ground up.
Or car air.
So FAA did not make it easy.
But that'd be nice to bring it out now.
It would be. I have no idea where it is or if it still exists. I should ask his daughter. She lives in
Yeah.
Fairborn. Yeah.
And he didn't get a, what's it called, when you go to the national patent. He didn't get a patent on it.
Right. He might be able to, yeah. And he might have. I don't know.
That'd be something I would be interested in
Yeah.
finding out.
It would be. It would be neat to see. Any other questions?
How old is his daughter?
Probably late 40s.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the only relative I know of Lewis Jackson right now is his sister who lives out in California, and Dewey Davenport's still in touch with her. So, and hopefully if we can get the state historic marker at the airport, and they want to do a mock-up of it with just a few words on it on the wing walls of the tunnel, that'll let people know that there's a state historic marker up there because it's so well recognized, and maybe pull them up to the airport, because we have a lot of scholarships, we have a lot of opportunities for young people up there. Just got to get them up there.
So board, we had budgeted last year. We're kind of waiting to see what happens with the airport board's application for the state marker. We did redesign it after the application, so we were already budgeted last year. We continued brought it forward to this year's budget to do something with the wing walls of the tunnel. That's going to honor not only Lewis A. Jackson, but also identify Beavercreek Township as well. So you'll see that the signage, and Tori King's been working on it for the Public Service Department, as we redid kind of the look to make it look like the actual state historical marker on one side. And it will, and I don't want to throw it out there because I want to show it as when we have the final design. Of course, it's going to be a budget ask as well. But I think it'll be on both sides of the tunnel. So as you're coming into the tunnel, you'll know that this is Lewis A. Jackson and what Lewis A. Jackson represented for Greene County and the Beavercreek community. So that's something we'll be bringing. We just got a second quote. It's been hard kind of get quotes for the actual signage up there. So, and the Public Service Department's also going to be working on some landscaping up there. And the marker is going to be located at the top of Dumford, which leads into the airport. So, and Dumford is a township road, which will be also connected through the roundabout as well. So we'll be bringing that shortly. We'll show you some of the concepts that we have, and be asking to do that. Our goal is to have that done late summer before the state makes the announcement in regards to fall ribbon cutting for hopefully the marker up at the airport.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, board. Let me get our next speaker. All right, Ted, can you hear us?
I can. Hello, everybody.
Good, Ted.
I'll be, just let me know when you want me to advance your slides. Let me share my screen so you can see what we're looking at.
Sure. Yeah, great. If you wouldn't mind, we'll skip down to slide 3, which what I'll just first start off by saying is, thanks for having me. I appreciate, I like this kind of checking in annually. I was looking back through the last few years and what an incredible difference a year makes. The Fed didn't start, we were at zero interest rate policy for years, and then post-COVID, and then the Fed started raising interest rates last year around June. So, even up until not even a year ago, we were at zero interest rates. So between then and now, a significant amount has changed. And, just in general, if you were to think about it, if you have a 5-year maximum horizon, which you do as a Ohio public entity to invest within, you have the maximum maturity, you can go out to 5 years. Are you guys getting feedback from me, or is this coming through clear?
Coming through clear?
That's clear.
Okay, good. So you have a maximum of 5 years. So if interest rates are at zero like they were, you try to stay as short as possible while trying to get at least a little bit of interest. But it was almost, most investors were getting something well below 1% for years after COVID hit. And so all of a sudden, interest rates go from 0 to near 5%, which is where they are now, and everybody wants 5%. Well, in general, if you think about it, within your 5-year time horizon, as interest rates are at 0, you want to stay as short as possible, which we stayed really short, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then as interest rates go up, you'd like, now that interest rates are 4 to 5%, you'd love to be able to lock everything out there for 5 years. And nobody is in that position either. You can't put all your money out to the 5-year mark. So, I'll just give you a little background to where we are right now. The Fed is expected to hike rates again by 25 basis points on the May 3rd meeting. That's projected by most as the last time they're going to hike rates. With the speed and the severity of them raising rates over the last year has been unprecedented. It hasn't even worked its way through the market, other than most businesses are now laying off people versus hiring. In many regards, especially in the financial sector. And so, the slowdown in the economy is, we think, coming along with all of these rate cuts. It's slowed down borrowing, and it's doing its job of trying to stem inflation. So, usually what happens with the Fed is they'll raise rates in times like this, just to stem inflation, and then they'll wind up the hiking cycle, and then they'll stop for 6 months to a year to let those interest rate hikes sink in and let it affect the economy. The difference this time is they've raised rates so quickly and so fast that the market's already starting to price in Fed rate cuts. As far, if we have another rate hike in May to get us to around 4.75 to 5% Fed funds rate, and the market's showing us that it could be as soon as July or September where they're going to be forced to cut rates again, which is pretty unusual. I mean, that's just wild swings. We're raising rates too fast, and then we all of a sudden are bringing them right back down. So it causes a lot of market turmoil. Also, with what happened with Silicon Valley Bank about a month ago, second largest bank to ever default, that's been a huge deal where everybody has been coming and trying to figure out where to invest funds, not on a bank's balance sheet, not as a deposit, especially in the private sector. You as a government, when you have deposits at a bank, they are required to be collateralized by the code with government bonds. So there's extra protection for your deposits at a bank by state law. So that wasn't really an issue for you as a township. But I will say it has caused every other private company, you're only FDIC insured up to $250,000. And so anybody with more than $250,000 was looking at their bank saying, do I think that they're going to be the next Silicon Valley Bank? So it's been as busy as we have seen since 2008, with investors looking to do the investments that you're currently doing, and what every other government investor is doing, just very basic, high grade commercial paper, CDs, treasuries, and the ICS product. That's really where all the money is flowing, even in the private sector right now, because they're just looking for safety. And then the last point I have is the yield curve is inverted to 6 months, which all that means is if you go out to buy a 6-month treasury, the yield is the greatest there. It's greater than the 30-year treasury yield. That's not normal. From 6 months out, the yield is lower. That's generally a precursor to a recession if you look at what's happened over time, and if you take notes from what the bond market's doing. So your ICS rate currently at 4.35%. That's 100% FDIC insured. The other thing I'm seeing, which I didn't put on here, was unprecedented amounts of cash in Star, Ohio, which is the state's large government investment pool. I'm sure you're aware of it. $22 billion of taxpayer money in that one account. It's crazy because as a percentage of the overall investments of any one public entity in the state of Ohio, it's never been higher. So what I've had a lot of is, for those who do use Star, Ohio, they're looking to diversify away from that. It's got this. Many think it's got the implied backing of the state, but it doesn't. It's just a government investment pool. So I've had a lot of requests to give ideas. for treasuries, CDs, all the same products you're doing as an alternative to Star Ohio, because that's an overnight rate that'll come down if the Fed starts cutting rates as early as July or September. And I've just pointed out, you've been using commercial paper. So, commercial paper generally only goes out to 9 months. And you as a government investor can put up to 40% of your portfolio into commercial paper. We've done a great job of adding commercial paper. We did that towards the end of, when we were still at zero in the first half of last year. And as that commercial paper has rolled over, we've taken some of it and been able to place it back at rates at the 4.5% or higher. So, and then I've just pointed out where rates are in the other two. If you could just go to the next slide, I will point out, what you currently have. So portfolio total is just over 8 million, 8,058,000 plus. You have roughly 3.3 million in commercial paper, which is the 9-month short-term investment that you're allowed to invest in up to 40%. And, the average maturity on that's very short, 3.8 months. A big chunk of that, 1.775, is coming due in the next 3 months. But your current yield on that 3.3 million is 4.07. So very, very good. That's because it's short term and it's rolled over within the last, 6 months or so. And we've been able to take advantage of the higher rates now that rates are so much higher. Your CDs, you have just over 3 million in CDs. The average is 12 months to maturity on that, which is good news. You have 2.5 million plus coming due within the next 18 months. So a lot of these CDs were purchased back when we were still at zero interest rate policy. First half of 22 and before, anything purchased then was well below 1%. And that's what you're seeing on these CDs. The average yield on those are 0.72. But as this $2.5 million that I point out comes due in the next 18 months, we're going to, current rates on CDs, as I showed you on the prior page, are 4.5 or better, out to a couple of years. And we did buy a couple of treasuries back when interest rates were at zero, just to try to lock in some better rates at the time. Those are still going to be out there until another year or two. So just going to the notes at the bottom, please stop me at any time if any of you have any questions. But so more than 50% of your portfolio will mature within the next 18 months, and that's great. So like I said, when interest rates are super low, you want to stay short term because there's no incentive to go out long. And we positioned, Ryan and I positioned the most, over 50% of it's come due in the short term, and that's proving out here with these maturities over the next 18 months. And so, hopefully interest rates will stay up in this range, 4 to 5%, within the next 18 months, and then you'll be able to turn around and lock that in. And then the question is, I would say that the biggest question you'd have is how much can you lock up for how long? Most are looking at 2-3 years, and some are going out 4 to 5, the maximum, because they don't think that rates are going to ever get any better than this 4 to 5% range. And they just don't think they're going to need the funds that they're looking at investing for that long. So that would really be my one point of suggestion is as these investments roll off, like you have 50% of your portfolio maturing in the next 18 months, decide how much of your money you're comfortable locking up for 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years, if any. And then, we look at locking in those rates because, many think that as soon as the second half of this year, we're going to see interest rates start to come down. And they already have in certain maturity ranges. So, but that being said, you guys are, I think positioned very well. And, we just have to burn off some of these CDs and then be able to reinvest them. And then if the rest of my presentation is just general information on, who we are, again, as a reminder in case you forget how we work. And that is the gist of the future outlook of interest rates and what you currently hold. Can I answer any questions?
If you can go back to the holdings slide, please.
4.
This one right there. So,
Yep.
So looking ahead, so if we're anticipating a May 3rd bump and then decline over the next probably through election season, because then we're heading into election year, and not too far off. So what is your recommendation, or why would we not go long on essentially the 50% that's coming due?
No, I would. That's, I definitely would consider going longer. There's no reason not to. I mean, to get 4 to 5% on short-term CDs and treasuries is, we haven't seen that in a long, long time. And so as any money that you have coming due, I just think let's just say you have let's just say it's $10 million total that you could invest. What percentage are you comfortable with tying up 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? That's really the main decision I think you have right now. And, we start working anything that comes due in the next 18 months and putting it into those buckets, and starting with the longer first, because I think interest rates are going to come down.
Mr. Rushing, as far as so what do we have outside of this bucket? Is there any additional dollars that we either have in something more short-term that we can move into long-term? And I guess it kind of goes with Chief, or did he leave us as far as?
No, he's right here, but I can
there it is.
answer
Yeah,
that.
Funding cycle was the next question, where we're at in the 10-year funding plan.
So in the 10-year funding plan, you'll hear about, so we're going to be talking later this evening about the union contract. We have an update on some projections on that. So, but we've also seen a cost of everything else go up as well in regards to this economy. As you know, the fire engines were a lot more than we anticipated. Right. The ladder truck was a lot more than we anticipated. And some of our personnel costs when it comes to the 10-year funding plan, it was a little off on the projections. So as we go forward in that 10-year, we're going to see less of a carryover, which would mean less that we could invest short-term.
Right. What year are we in of the 10-year?
29 is the last year. 30 is when we'll need to, 29 is when we'll have to go out for vote for 30 to start collections on a new process.
Okay. So if we could tie up, so we lost essentially ground in the first, if we look at 2020, 2021, 2022, and so we had 3 years of agony. And so then we're going back into where we could have a potential of a 3 to 5 year period. Is that correct? What you're anticipating as far as above 4%? If we take in the next 18 months, obviously the rates will come down by the 18th month. So what you'll replace it with in 18 months from now versus, I don't know, of that 2.5, right, of the 2.5 and the 1.775, well, the 1.775 we know in the next 3 months. So that's actually kind of perfect timing. Of the 2.5 over the next 18 months, how does that ladder out as far as 6, 12, and 18 months?
Because in 2000,
if it's all,
so I'm just looking at
months, yeah, we're kind of, it doesn't help us a whole lot unless you recommend, I don't know if you're churning at all, if you're recommending selling prior to maturity.
I generally don't recommend. I mean, governments are generally buy and hold. The code even kind of mentions, it's it's more conservative, but I don't ever, you're not managing this it's generally buy and hold to where you can. And most of the decision that the government, for all my government investors, and I work with hundreds of them, is the decision making isn't generally market based where they can get their best yields. It's more of a cash flow basis like you're talking about, right? So you're driven very much by that. But so I'm looking at your CDs. Your first question is how many come due in 24. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1.1 million roughly come due in 24, and then another roughly 500,000 in 25 and 26. So to 2 million of, what's the total that I say for CDs?
2.556.
Because in 23,
3,056 total, you say 2.556 matures in the next 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, so you the CDs that I have, you have one. No, I have more than that for your CDs, right? Let me look. You have 3,056,000 in CDs total. Correct. So roughly 2 million. Yeah, you have 1 million coming due in 2023. More than that, 1.25 million. So it's roughly half and half. Half and half. Yeah. So that between that and the commercial paper, hopefully we'll be able to get those rates at 4 to 5% locked in, and we'll start with the longer maturities. However long you determine is comfortable, and then just have to work from there. I mean, the main consideration that I deal with everybody is you need to have cash when you need it, obviously, and that's the driving force, right? You just can't predict the future, and you can't put everything out long when rates are this high, and you can't, you can't have everything overnight when rates are at zero. It just between 2008 and COVID, we spent so many years at near zero. Everybody's now like, I want to lock in at 4 to 5%, and of course I want them to as well, but you also have to have a ladder because you have expenses along the way.
Yeah, what's on the 2 million, why did we set that number there, and what's that yield on that?
Well, so the yield's there. I think the coupons are both under 1%. So what happened is when interest rates were at zero for 3 years or more there, people just started saying, look, I'm getting zero. The rates are 2.2 something on CDs for even at 2 years. So, people started just putting a little bit out into governments and treasuries, and also people were bumping into, they hit their maximum amount of commercial paper they could buy because you're limited to 40% of your investable assets, whatever that number is determined. And so I think that you bought governments, a couple of years ago. They have a couple of years to burn off, and the rate there is coupons are under 1%. So it's very, very typical of what a lot of portfolios have in there as it burns off.
Do we know the maturity or burn off rate on those comparatively, just so we understand? Because obviously that's not keeping up with inflation whatsoever.
The 20, well, you want the
2 million.
The bond, one of the 2 million is in I think 2025, and the other one is in 26. That's when they mature. So yeah, they were purchased out longer. At the time, 75 bips was well above market. You probably got more than double what you could get overnight, for short rates at the time of purchase for the next 2 years. And obviously, wish you didn't have those now, but again, it's like I'm saying, you just can't time everything perfectly.
Okay. That's all the questions I had right now. Does anybody else have other ones?
I don't have any.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for the report,
Sure.
the update, and good to see you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Board.
Only thoughts on that are just to, obviously, the 2 million sitting in treasuries, it was great then, it's not great now,
Right.
obviously. And so if we anticipate inflation to stick around longer than the high interest rates, which it'll take a while to calm itself back down, if when, then it's just a slower recovery as far as trying to essentially rebuild or restock the 10-year plan. So we can have a committee meeting about that or something at some point, and just maybe talk about maybe a rebalancing or how we want to rebalance. They're conservative, and they should be, and we should be as well, but there's also some timing opportunities that are coming up that won't come back, at least most likely over the next 4 to 6 years is what I'm being told. So
Thank you, Board. Work with Mr. Rushing and set up an investment oversight committee.
and that's not to be construed as dissatisfaction. It's just
No.
there's timing right now to
And
move things.
we'll have discussions later on tonight, that's where we're gonna, probably have to give it a little deeper dive in regards to the 10-year funding plan. Thank you, Board. The next item would be citizens desiring to speak.
All right. Give any individual that'd like to come and speak with us 3 minutes. If there's anybody that would like to, I don't see anyone. So we'll move on. I'll give it back to Mr. Zahari if there's no old business, but it looks like we have some new business.
Thank you, Board. I'm going to turn it over to our chair of our Employee Recognition Committee, Tori King.
I feel like we should give a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Board, for your time this evening. So the last time I was here was December for our Employee of the Year, and I had noted that Mr. Zaharieff and I, we're going to be working on trying to bring the Employee Recognition Committee wholesome, more than just Employee of the Year, and recognize our employees throughout the whole entire year. And so that's why I'm here this evening. We have a lot of employees to recognize, so I'm happy to do that. So I thought I'd start off with, according to a 2022 news release by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, wage and salary workers in the public sector had a median tenure of 6.8 years, higher than the median 3.7 years for private sector employees. Here at Beavercreek Township, we have several employees who have worked for the organization much longer than the average 6.8 years. We would like to take the time to recognize those individuals and their dedication to the public. While 2020 shook the world, and I'm sure we can all agree we don't wish to look back, that is where we will begin this evening, because there's a number of employees who celebrated monumentous anniversaries that year and surely deserve to be recognized. These include individuals such as Scott Dorston and John Merks and Tim Parks. So we have a few here with us this evening, and they all marked 30 years within a township in 2020. Next up, we have 2021, and if 2020 didn't encourage you into an early retirement or moving to a deserted island, then I think your gumption to stick it out certainly deserves recognition. Also worth mentioning, 2021 was a big year of internal growth within a township. The pandemic required creativity and willingness to change practices and procedures for how daily operations occurred. We've all heard you can't teach an old dog new tricks. However, working with these colleagues every day, I have seen their ability to pivot and accept change as a positive for the betterment of the organization and those we serve. 2022 brought back a sense of normalcy, and you know who was still there after the storm? Employees like John Schroeder, notably reaching 30 years of service, as well as Nathan Heister, Lori Brown, and Trish Gustafson, working 20 years of service. Not only has their tenure surpassed the average by double and triple, but they stayed throughout the many challenges. And I also have a proclamation with many other employees to be recognized. Do they need a copy of that? Okay. What? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
So are we reading this in, or?
Yeah, please read that into the record, please.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to read in a proclamation in honor of abundant years of service to Beavercreek Township, resolution number 202-30424-admin-E. Adoption date would be April 24th, 2023. Whereas Beavercreek Township has established an employee recognition program administered by an employee recognition committee. And whereas recognition for years of service has shown to improve employee retention, increase employee loyalty, drive employee satisfaction and engagement, attract top talent, as well as strengthen organization culture. On this date, the Employee Recognition Committee would like to recognize numerous employees for their many years of service to Beavercreek Township. And whereas on this day, Beavercreek Township wishes to honor Scott Dorston, John Merks, Tim Parks, John Schroeder for their 30-plus years of service. And whereas Beavercreek Township extends sincere appreciation to David Vanderbos and Ben Northrup for their 25-plus years of service. And whereas Beavercreek Township desires to recognize Bill Kapler, Jim Headley, Craig Ward, Dustin Harrison, Nathan Arndt, John Cochran, Nathan Heister, Lori Brown, Trish Gustafson for their 20-plus years of service. And whereas Beavercreek Township wishes to show appreciation to Justin Collins, Sean Fowler, Tom Grismer, Justin Kelly, Christine Hawker, Randy Grogan, Tyson Dean, Mike McDufford, Lee Polis, Michelle Grogan, Dave Ekman, Courtney Harmon, Herno Vollmer, Alan Stifler for their 15-plus years of service. And whereas Beavercreek Township offers sincere gratitude to Tim Fisher, Rob Negri, Andrew Brewer, Doug Ransdell, Chris Heaton, Mike Mishner, John Redler, Nathan Dewey, Randy Lish, Chris Ferguson, Steve Hamilton, Alex Ferguson, Ed Dalton, John Rudd, Rob Shaw for their decade plus of dedicated service. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township, Greene County, Ohio, hereby expresses its pride and its heartfelt gratitude at the employees mentioned above for their extended years of service and devotion to the well-being of Beavercreek Township. In witness thereof, we have here unto set our hand cause the seal of Beavercreek Township be affixed on this day of 24th day of April, year 2023.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
I think that about covers all of that.
That was it. Good job, Tori.
Yeah, board, what we're gonna do for here on out with meeting with the committee and as mentioned, and as mentioned in the resolution, this is an employee-driven committee. So this is not management saying who should be recognized or who should be the employee of the year. This is peers telling the committee who they think should be recognized. As we go forward since COVID, we will be recognizing these folks, so we won't have to read that many names. We'll be going as they come through their anniversary. So I'll turn it back over to Tori.
All right. And then tonight I also would like to recognize a special employee who has fit a lifetime of work in just over a decade with his time in the township. And I'm sure you can all imagine how difficult it is to sneak one in on this employee who also finds it just so special to recognize all of us. So this evening, I'd like to recognize Mr. Alex Zaharieff. While I could undoubtedly stand up here for hours speaking of the growth and change that he has brought to the organization and community, we've managed to squeeze it into a 2-page proclamation. So I'll let you all read that.
Mr. Have to read that?
All right, no crying.
Well, first, I was unaware of any of this, so I'll go.
Board, it's my honor to read in this proclamation in honor of Alex Zaharieff on the occasion of his retirement from Beavercreek Township, Ohio, Resolution 20230-424-admin-F. Whereas Alex Zaharieff began his public service career in the Traffic Safety Division of Beavercreek City while attending school in 1988. And whereas Alex Zaharieff volunteered as a firefighter, paramedic, and company officer for the Beavercreek Township Fire Department from 1990 to 1997. And whereas Alex Zaharieff was employed by the Greene County Juvenile Court as a community service coordinator until 1995 when he became the chief investigator for the Common Pleas Court. And whereas on August 1st, 1999, Alex Zaharieff joined the Xenia Fire Division, becoming a full-time career firefighter, paramedic. During his career with the Xenia Fire Division, Alex took on several roles and responsibilities. He was a certified hazardous material technician and a member of the regional hazmat team. He was a state certified EMS instructor and a member of the Fire Division's EMS committee, which was instrumental in many of the patient care advances implemented across the region. Alex assisted the Fire Division with writing grants to receive funding for fire prevention materials, self-contained breathing apparatus, a fire training trailer, and staffing through the SAFER grant. And whereas prior to beginning his career with the city of Xenia, Alex earned a bachelor's degree in political science from Wright State University. He knew following his career as a firefighter that he aspired to advance into a leadership role, so he pursued his master's degree in public administration to its completion in 2004. And whereas in 2011, Alex Zaharieff began his service as the Township Administrator and Public Safety Director with overall responsibility for the day-to-day operations of all township functions. Alex served as the first administrative head of the township, communicated the vision of the Board of Trustees, and provided leadership that led to implementation of goals, objectives, and policies. And whereas during his time as administrator, Alex demonstrated a comprehensive and professional knowledge of public administration and developed excellent working relationships with township board and staff, local elected officials, and the general public. As public safety director, Alex responded to major incidents as an incident commander. And whereas in addition to his regular work schedule, Alex has devoted numerous hours over the years to volunteering for many organizations, including but not limited to legislative intern for State of Ohio, House Representative, emergency planner of the Miami Valley Emergency Management Agency, civilian co-chair of the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Environmental Restoration Committee, Dayton Area Managers Association, ex officio member of the Board of Director of Beavercreek Chamber, the Greene County Career Center, Advisory Committee for Health and Legal Technology, International City County Management Association, Ohio City County Management Association, Rotary Club of Beavercreek, President 2019 to 20, and the Ohio Township Association. And whereas Alex Zaharieff announced his intent to retire from public service on May 15th, 2023, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township, Greene County, Ohio, extend to Alex Zaharieff their sincere and heartfelt gratitude for his exemplary service, vision, and devotion to the citizens of Beavercreek Township, and congratulate him upon his retirement. Be it further proclaimed that the staff of Beavercreek Township extends appreciation and admiration to Alex for his strong leadership and concise objectives in the workplace. Do we have a second?
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Thank you, board. I appreciate that. I was not expecting that. So
Thank you,
I'll
Tori.
talk to you tomorrow.
I said, yeah, I knew you'd like to pull over a good surprise.
Yeah.
So we've been working on it.
Thank you.
Nice
That is
job.
all I have for this evening. I think I've fulfilled the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tori.
Nice job.
Thank you, Tori. Thank you, board. The next added item is a proclamation for the Beavercreek Rotary Club. They will be celebrating their 50th year in May. The city is passing something very similar to what we have tonight. If we can read it into record, since it was in addition to the agenda.
Yeah, I'm going to move to adopt the following proclamation in honor of the Beavercreek Rotary's 50th anniversary from Beavercreek Township, Ohio. Whereas the Beavercreek Rotary Club was chartered on May 12, 1973 as the local chapter of Rotary International, the world's largest service club. And whereas the Beavercreek Rotary Club currently has over 70 members that include and interact ages 12 through 18, Rotaract, I'm not pronouncing that correct?
Yeah, Rotaract.
Rotaract, college students, and community leaders from retail business, government, education, engineering, construction, finance, real estate, law, and charitable groups, men and women, young and old, active and retired. And whereas the motto of Rotary is service above self, which this club honors by contributing time and money to various community causes, and whereas the club and its foundation annually distribute financial grants to local organizations serving the health, humanitarian, and educational needs of the community, including Rotary International's partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to eradicate polio worldwide. Whereas the Beavercreek Rotary Club, with a land donation from a Rotarian, Beavercreek Township and Greene County, established Rotary Park, the largest park in the Beavercreek community. And whereas the Beavercreek Rotary Club helps fund area youth programs each year and provides financial support directly or through its foundation to such organizations as Family Violence Prevention Center, Owens Place Park, Dictionaries, Apple Dumpling Books for all second and third graders in the community, Feed the Creek, Air Camp Scholarships, Tree Recovery Program after the 2019 tornado, Christmas Gift and Food Program for needy families, as well as funding scholarships through the four-way test speech contest and 4 academic scholarships for the Beavercreek High School students each year to Wright State University. Now therefore be it resolved, the Beavercreek Township Board of Trustees hereby proclaim Friday, May 12th, 2023 as Beavercreek Rotary's 50th anniversary.
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Thank you, board. Just need a motion to go into executive session.
This time I'll make a motion to go into executive session under section 121.22G1 to consider the employment of a public official.
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Make a motion to come out of executive session?
Second.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Next item would be the Greene County Sheriff's Office. No agenda items. Our next agenda item is under Community Development and Risk, and that's a zoning commission appointment. That is on page 32 of your packet. You can pass it as presented.
Second here. Mr. Hill,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution, can't read it. Let's get the word agenda. 202-30424-CDR-A, resolution to appoint Jim Hill as alternate member of the zoning commission as presented.
Second?
Trustee Kretz.
Yes.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 34 of your packet. This is an IT surplus. These are all obsolete, and they're all Surface Goes. And they were, once we put them on Gov Deals, minus obviously the hard drive, it will then be, any funds received from that will go back to the fire fund. And you can pass it as presented.
I make a motion for resolution number 202-30424-IT-A. Resolution finding certain township equipment to be surplus and to dispose of it.
Second.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Next item is going to be under the Public Service Department. And the first thing tonight is to accept the bids for the Factory Road drainage project. And I will turn it over to Mr. Parks.
Good evening, Board.
Hello.
As you know, we had to rebid this project because it came in over the engineer's estimate. Actually, this time around, we came in under. So we are recommending R.B. Jurgens to complete this project at $300,377.89.
There's a motion on page 36.
Any questions? I have none. You did a good presentation in the packet.
Did you change the scope, or was it the exact same scope, just
It was the
rebid?
exact same scope. What the problem was the cast in place control structure. In our original estimate, they were using American steel. And because this has ARPA money attached to it, we had to use the American steel, which upped the price. So it went from 130,000 to 190.
I make a motion on resolution number 202-30424-PST-A to accept the bid from R.B. Jurgens for Factory Road drainage improvement in the amount of $300,378 and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Next item is the accepted bids for the federal grant money we received regarding the resurfacing project on Orchard, Yellow Brick, and Factory Road. I'll turn it over to Mr. Parks.
Actually, we got two bids on this project. One is from John R. Jurgensen at $820,502.27, and one from Barrett Paving for $831,094.50. They're fairly close, which makes us feel good because I don't think anything's been left out. And actually, the engineer's estimate on this one was $992,150. So we came in way under, which is good. Now, when we originally applied for the grant, This project was at $547, I believe, off the top of my head, or 590. So went up quite a bit. So we had to go scrounge some funds, which we kind of planned for a little bit, but we spent most of the day Thursday going to look for other funds to cover it. Now, out of that 820,000, we'll be getting back like 389,000 from Miami Valley Regional Planning.
Good.
So we went from our portion being like 40% to our portion being like 53%. Which, for the work we're having done in today's economy, I think we got a pretty good price. So we were recommending John R. Jurgensen.
There is a typo under the purchasing bid received. It says 802 instead of 820. But then the
My
sample
bad.
motion is 820.
820.
Yeah, it also, up top it says staff is recommending accepting the bid from John R. Jurgensen in the amount of $831,502.27. So it is 820?
It's 820, 502.27
Okay,
is the way it is in VIP.
okay.
And the reason there's not the VIP request number is because we didn't get these passed until today. Because of moving funds and everything,
Sure.
so.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve 2023-0424-PSD-B as in boy. Is that an I or one, or no?
I made the
Dash B,
motion.
yep. To accept the bid from John R. Jurgensen for resurfacing of Orchard Lane, Yellow Brick Road, and Factory Roads in the amount of $820,502.27, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
I'll second.
Trustee Crutz,
Yes.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
And for this last request, I'm gonna defer to Mr. Schroeder,
Okay.
'cause he's taking the lead on this one.
All right.
Good evening, board.
Good evening.
This is a purchase request for a new furnace and condensing unit for Suite A at Fire Admin. That unit has been down since, I think it was March or April 2nd. Let me get back into my notes here. Oh, I'm sorry, no, February 23rd. That unit's been down. It has a igniting issue where we can no longer regulate, so it's a small explosion when it lights. I have not been there to hear it, but that's what I've been told through fire. And then upon doing some investigation, it's in the attic space, so it no longer meets the code. There's no space around it. So when you have the small explosion issue and you put it in an attic, you are susceptible to having some bad things happen. So we shut it down. So they've had no furnace, they have no air conditioning, they have nothing until we do something new. And the proposal is to bring it out of the attic, and they have a small storage room. We'll have to move a door, but we'll put it in that room, which now becomes more accessible and more safe because it'll actually fall into codes. We got 3 bids back, 3 quotes back from Boyle, Cider Services, and Stevenson. We made the recommendation for Boyle, seeing as how they are our contractor for the next 2 years, our service contractor that's already in place. So it makes sense from a standpoint of they're already in the buildings, constantly looking at them. So if we do have a warranty issue, we're not bringing in a separate contractor in to look at a unit. It's handled all by the same company. Do you have any questions?
When we do that, do we ask them to meet the lowest bid, or do we not ask that?
We did not ask to meet the lowest bid. It was lowest best is what I've always gone by. Which is why I made the recommendation for Boyle. And just for information, this is an 80% furnace. In order to go more efficient, we would have to cut a new hole for the flue. So I'm just
For the
to get the,
makeup there?
yeah.
Yep.
Which with a metal roof, I prefer not to cut any more holes in it than we
How many
have.
ton unit was it, just out of curiosity?
Their unit was a Lennox.
How many ton, I'm sorry?
Oh, it's 4 ton.
4 ton.
Make a motion 202-30424-Road C to approve the purchase request to Boyle Mechanical for one complete HVC unit for Suite A in the amount of $12,685 and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second, and that includes them removing the other one.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Thank you, board. Next item is on page 39 of your packet. The first item we have under the fire department tonight is to accept the resignation of a firefighter. We have a motion there right in front, in your packet under number 1. Fire chief's here to answer any questions.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Any questions?
No, but
It's unfortunate.
it is unfortunate.
It is.
And he is eligible, yes. I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of firefighter Anthony Dorston effective May 2nd, 2023. Anthony Dorston is eligible for reemployment with Beavercreek Township.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Thank you, board. And next item is a purchase request for intake valves and master streams. I'll turn it over to the chief.
And this is the first of many purchases you will see through the year for the new apparatus that will be coming in the fall, as well as the ladder and the rescue engine that will be coming in, I believe, next year. We're seeing regular price increases on about a quarterly basis. And so we're going to go ahead and buy this stuff now at today's prices and hopefully have a savings moving forward. So these, I believe, are slated to be received fourth quarter, I think November, December. So the first set of pieces will be put into play almost immediately, and then the others will be held until the other apparatus come in. So the initial 4 engines will get outfitted this fall.
I don't have any questions.
There's a motion on page 40.
What?
I'll make a motion to approve purchase request 23-fire-0110 to Atlantic Emergency Solutions for intake valves and master stream appliances in the amount of $44,372.10 and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Thank you, board. And the next purchase request is high-rise packs. Turn it over to the chief.
Similar situation here. These aren't specifically for the new apparatus. They'll actually go into service on the current apparatus and then get moved over to the new when it comes in. This is an upgrade from our current capability that's a result of the trainings and tactics that have been developed based off of the training. So what they found is the original packs that we had, which is actually our second generation of pack, are not adequate for how we're operating now that we have all the facilities like at the Green and our higher rise, at least for us, hotels on the north side of town as well. So this is taking our lessons learned and building an equipment pack that matches our capabilities and our tactics. I believe the old packs will remain in service as the reserve unit packs once the engines, all the shuffling gets done with the new first 2 engines and the reserve engines.
So can you explain a little bit about a high-rise connection kit?
Yes, so if you think of a multi-story apartment complex like at the Green, when we have a fire there, the standard way that we would draw a hose, like if your house had a fire, we're going to pull a hose directly off the engine. It'll be connected at one end on the engine, and the nozzle will go in through the front door, back door, and we'll extinguish the fire. The size of the multi-story buildings doesn't lend itself to being able to do that. There's not enough hose to be manageable to make that connection. So what we do is we use what's called a standpipe. And what that is basically it's a big pipe inside the building, and our engine will hook up to the outside of the building and pump water into the pipe, similar to a sprinkler system. And then inside, the firefighters will take a detached hose pack, and they'll go into the building, they'll connect the hose to the pipe on the inside of the building, and then stretch the lines from, it's typically in a stairwell. So if you've been into unfinished stairwells, I'm sure you've seen these before, where there's a pipe, a big metal pipe with a valve, and oftentimes there'll be a little bit of hose in there. We will hook our own equipment up to that, and then we extend that onto the floor of the fire to extinguish the fire.
So that is code for any high-rise building to have those pipes in the stairwell?
Yes, high-rise are the most common where you'll see it, but you'll also see them occasionally in the large big box stores. So if you go into Lowe's or Home Depot, those places, you'll see those in those buildings as well. And it's usually because of the horizontal distance as opposed to the vertical distance.
Okay, because I thought it was, you take the hose up the ladder and then put the connecting thing up there. That's why I wanted to get a visual.
Depending on, so we have all of those options.
Okay.
But the hose, the standpipe packs are typically, or the high-rise packs as we're calling them in here, are typically designed when we can't access easily from either the ground or from a ladder.
Okay,
And
thank you.
they have matter of fact, when we do some training on the high-rise packs, I'll invite you out if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, I'd like to
give you
see
a
what
better
they look-
sense of what it looks like.
Never knew that connected with our own. That's a good learning moment.
And typically, so just to give you an idea of the differences, number one, it's bundled up in a package that the firefighters can easily carry. And then two, it's usually made of lighter material so that as they're carrying it up multiple floors, it doesn't tax them as much as it would pulling a traditional set of hose and nozzles up. So very
interesting.
specialized.
Thank you. Any other questions? And I'll make a motion, 202-30424-Fire-C, to approve purchase request 23 Fire 0092 to Atlantic Emergency Solutions for high-rise firefighting equipment in the amount of $26,281.24, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Last item's not in the chief's packet, but we added it, was a surplus resolution that came through staff to surplus a lot of fire department equipment, and it will go back into the fire fund. You can pass it as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 20230424-Fire-D, a resolution finding certain township equipment to be surplus and to dispose of it.
Second.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. That's all I have for you.
All right. Thank you.
I had a question to the chief.
Yes, ma'am.
It was on news the other night that one of the fire stations took some old hose and cut it and gave it to schools. Our schools now have, we have those locks on the doors, so we don't need to do that. But do we do anything? Do we give our old hoses to any other community, or could that be done?
I believe when it gets surplus, it goes on to Gov Deals
Okay.
and is sold. Fire hose is one of those things that doesn't have a specific end of life to it. So we usually will use it until it's pretty worn out, and then we'll sell it. And then if somebody were to acquire it, they could continue using it as long as they meet all the pressure testing requirements and everything else.
Okay.
But yeah, we don't typically.
Yeah, they were cutting it about 6 inches and putting it on the hinge of the door inside the schoolroom.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't heard of that.
I was like, oh, hadn't seen that before.
Yeah.
But
If
that's
they
better
did reach
than-
out and they needed something, we'd certainly work with them if we could. But yeah, with the locks that the Creek Safe has put
Right.
together, that's an excellent solution. So,
Correct. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay. Legal advisor?
I have
Anything
nothing today, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Rushing?
Yes, thank you, Board. Just want to present to you a audit that was completed recently. In addition to our biannual statutory financial audit that audits all financial records and transactions from the previous 2 years. The state of Ohio does do random audits of the various reporting agencies, especially in regards to OPERS, the Ohio Police Fire and Pension Fund, and other state retirement funds. The Auditor of State's office has the ability to audit those randomly at any time. And we were selected for one of those, I call it a random audit, but I'm sure they have a mechanism in which they audit those on a regular basis. But for us, it's not done regularly. So our police and fire fund, our police and fire pension fund was audited recently by the Ohio Auditor of State. And in that, they reconciled 2021 reports and every information, all the census data in terms of not only members, but all the contributions all tie out to what they statutorily need to be, and there were no exceptions to that report. I do want to commend, obviously, our finance director, Terry Moulden, and our recently outgoing accounts payable payroll specialist, Jay McAuliffe, for all their hard work in the day-to-day operation of the finance department. It's their work that shines through these audits, and when we can get an audit back that has no exceptions and everything ties back to have no findings is a true testament to their hard work. So I want to thank Terry and her staff for that. But I'm sure Terry and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
I don't have any. But thank you for doing a great job.
Thank you. All right, meetings, Miami Valley Regional Planning,
No meeting.
thank you. TAC,
No meeting.
Regional Planning and Coordinating.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Health Department, next Health Department meeting is the first Thursday in May, so I'll have something to report at a later date. School Superintendent,
I have a meeting tomorrow night with the superintendent of schools. City manager and I met. Monthly meeting is next week, but we saw each other last week. So really we had some discussion about Thursday's meeting, which is going to be the Greene County Administrators meeting, which includes all the city managers, township administrator in the county, where we're going to be discussing several major items. One of them, as the board knows, is PSISN, countywide dispatch, and a countywide marketing plan for Honda. So, and Mr. Rushing will be attending that with me on Thursday.
okay, thank you. Right, Pat,
No meeting, and the Greene County wastewater meeting is Thursday or Wednesday? Sometime this week. Someone else will have a report next meeting.
Township Association.
There was a meeting with the county engineer, hosted that meeting, and I was not present, but all I heard, it was very long.
A lot of information she threw at everybody.
Good, good.
And Investment Oversight.
The only thing there would be maybe to reach out, Mr. Rushing, to the committee and just maybe check availability for May or June to get together as a committee. That way with the new fiscal officer can participate in that, perhaps.
I will do that.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Accept a motion to go into executive session.
I'll move to go into executive session under Ohio Revised Code 121.22G4, preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. And also, should I check the other one too?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it should say
Should
the-
also say to consider the employment of a public employee and appointment of a public official.
Yes.
To consider the employment of a public employee and the appointment of a public official.
Under 121.22G1.
122.22G1.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
Trustee Dan.
Yes. Right, we'll return to our regular scheduled meeting. It is 9:06 p.m. I'll accept a motion.
Second.
I make a motion to return to our regular meeting.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to enter into the 2023-2026 collective bargaining agreement.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
trustee Kretz,
Yes.
trustee Dean.
Yes.
Make a motion to accept the resignation of Ryan Rushing as Township Fiscal Officer effective April 30th, 2023 at 11:59 PM.
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
And Mr. Rushing, I'd like to thank you for everything that you've done for the office as fiscal officer and for the township and for staff and for the residents and the taxpayers. You fulfilled every promise you made, and it's appreciated. So yes.
trustee Wallace,
Yes.
trustee Dean.
Yes.
I make a motion to appoint Alex Zahariev as fiscal officer for Beavercreek Township to fill the unexpired term effective May 1st, 2023 until March 31st, 2024.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
trustee Kretz,
Yes.
trustee Dean.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. That's all we have for tonight.
I make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
trustee Kretz,
Yes.
trustee Dean.
Yes.
Thank you for sitting through all